higher education, but I also believe in associate's degrees. I believe in the trades. You know, one of the people I know who makes the most money is an electrician. You know, union work is good work. There's nothing wrong with it. I was a driller myself, and while I may not be as fancily educated as my colleagues here, I am rather erudite. So, what does that mean? I'll write you a crib sheet later. Yeah, I do believe we need.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I would be remiss as the Associate Dean of Liberal Arts to point out, if I did not point out, that a psychology degree is quite a good degree. And we tend to place nearly every psychology graduate. No picking on psychology.
Liberal arts degree. Liberal arts.
Yeah, no picking on liberal arts. We'll talk about that later. I think I'm going to have a rebuttal right here. All right, Mr. Andrus, it's your pick.
Okay, let's go to economy, question 5.
Question 5. Other countries have established local content laws that give domestic businesses first consideration in providing services and materials to the oil and gas industry, or establish minimum requirements for project work to happen within the country. Would you be in favor of Congress passing new local content laws here?
No, probably not. I tend to think that we should keep the federal government out of as much as possible, and so these type of things will probably be handled better at the state and local level. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Andrus.
Can I use my one rebuttal there?
Of course.
No offense. Yeah. While it's ironic to me, the Libertarian Party in general, and I love Aaron, we get along great, but the idea of auditioning for a federal job while being in favor of basically getting rid of government and using the hell out of me. All I would have to say is that the federal government, we are a society, and as such, not every decision affects every one of us, but it affects the body as a whole. And so I do believe that some regulation is good regulation. And that's one where a congressman would come in handy, I would think, saying, yes, we want to push our local companies. You know, we have out in the Gulf, there's many drilling companies. One of them is BP, that was responsible for that big spill a few years ago. It's a foreign company. Maybe favoritism should be given to local American businesses first, certainly on a case-by-case basis, and especially when Louisiana's economy is struggling.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Guillory, it's your turn.
Let's take national security, Q4.
Q4. Is China or Russia a bigger threat to American national security?
Well, there's no topic that's more personal to me and more important to me than national security, because we can have this debate about education, infrastructure, businesses, and roads. If we don't protect our homeland, if we don't protect our people, and not to be too dramatic, but if there is a nuclear bomb that hits our country, all of that will be moot. So whatever it takes to defend our country, whatever resources our troops have, I just want you to know, as your congressman, I will do everything I can to get those resources to our men and women, our brave men and women of our armed services. China or Russia, I think they're both serious threats, and I think they pose different threats in different areas. I think cybersecurity is huge. I think in this last election, I do believe that there was meddling, and the president was on an interview this weekend that said both China and Russia meddled with our election. I tend to believe him, and I know that he's privileged to more intelligence than we are. But as a congressman, I want our intelligence agencies, I want our men and women of the military to have every resource they have, every gun they need, every computer they need, every tank, every Humvee, and I know Congressman Higgins agrees with me on that. But there's something deeper here, and I have some time left, so I need to bring this up, because I'll be honest with you, as a challenger, I'm not going to have the money as our incumbent does to get on TV. You'll hear me on the radio maybe a little bit and on social media, but there's a lot of members in our district, Congressman, that don't realize you do not live in our district. And I'm not attacking you when I do this. I'll have a beer with you any day of the week, but it's not going to change my opinion that we shouldn't balance the budget or get flood insurance under control. But living in our district is vital. when I go to the store to get eggs and milk or whatnot, I'm going to Nunu's or Helo's or Rouse's, and it's healthy to get an earful. So I have a question. I know who I'm going to vote for this year. I know who I'm going to vote for Congress. Congressman, who are you going to vote for Congress?
Okay, you're finished, Mr. Guillory. You've been directly mentioned in his comment. Mr. Higgins, would you like to respond?
Well, I'm not from China or Russia. My heritage is 200 years deep, South Louisiana. The Constitution clearly states that elected representatives in the People's House, in which I'm honored to serve, shall be selected by the people of the several states. The sovereign lines that were recognized by our founding fathers were state lines. Our founding fathers clearly stated that as a congressman, we would represent cultures and communities. I represent the culture and communities that the Higgins family has lived within for 200 years, and it's somewhat personally offensive to me to suggest otherwise. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Okay, now we're going on to the lightning round. So this is going to be 10 seconds per candidate. So you're going to have a chance very quickly to say kind of yes, no, etc. So don't wax eloquently. Just give us your best shot, okay? We're going to start with Ms. Methvin. So you will get the very first one. 10 seconds, please. President Trump's tax cuts, good for America, bad for America?
Bad for America and bad for average working people. This has created a huge problem in our country, and we need to undo it.
Okay, Mr. Thomas?
Bad for America. I believe that it gives breaks to the top 1% and doesn't really take into consideration of what the bottom percent is really going through as a nation.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Loaded question. It's good for part of America, it's bad for part of America. I do think the tax burden should be shared, which is lacking from that bill, so it needs to be augmented.
Okay, Mr. Anders?
Excellent. Tax cut, deregulation, fantastic. Could go more. The only other thing we need to do, though, is cut the spending. We have to get spending under control.
Thank you. Mr. Guillory?
Completely agree. Great for America, but we must get spending under control.
Okay, Mr. Higgins?
Completely supported the plan. It was wonderful for America. It has reignited the American economy. Our GDP for the first time in many, many decades, we're looking at over 4% growth in 3 quarters in a row here.
Okay, thank you. We've reached everybody. Let's, this one goes to you first, Mr. Thomas. Federal budget deficits and the national debt. Big problem or small problem?
Okay, all right, it was kind of flickering there. Federal budget deficits and the national debt, big problem.
Or small
Or small problem. Definitely the deficit is a big problem. I think we're taking on more debt than the country is needed, and we need to focus more on economic development to raise.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Anderson?
Deficits are a big problem. The national debt, we carry a big credit card. So the deficit, we need to get spending under control. I agree with my colleague.
Okay, Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, huge problem. My #1 priority in Congress would be to address that issue.
Okay, Mr. Guillory?
We have to get the deficit down. In 10 years, it's my understanding we're going to spend more on our interest payments than discretionary spending. Cut spending, cut spending.
Okay, Mr. Higgins?
The national debt and annual deficit spending is a tremendous problem. I support a balanced budget amendment and the expansion of the American economy. You'll never tax your way out of this thing.
Thank you.
To grow the economy.
Ms. Methvin?
It's a huge problem, and I'm surprised to hear Congressman Higgins say otherwise. He voted for the massive tax cut that benefited corporations
Thank you,
and
Ms.
also
Methvin.
for the spending bill.
Next question. This one goes to, let's see, who started the last one? Mr. Thomas started the last one, so I think we go to Mr. Anderson down there. Okay. Interference in American elections. Are we doing enough to prevent this or not?
No, obviously not. As a matter of fact, Congress just voted against spending to increase security to prevent such thing from happening again.
Okay, Mr. Andrews?
No, that's a vital interest to every American citizen that needs to be addressed.
Okay, Mr. Guillory?
I do trust our federal government in this regard. I do trust our executive. I do believe that we shouldn't take it lightly, and we have to continue to investigate ways that we can do better.
Okay, Mr. Higgins?
Yes, it's a tremendous problem, but we are using all of our assets to fight it. It's not going to stop. It didn't begin in this last election cycle. It began long ago.
Okay, Ms. Methvin?
We're not doing enough, and also the attacks on our special counsel and the Department of Justice in trying to get to the bottom of it are a disservice to the country.
Okay. Mr. Thomas?
No, we're not doing enough, and I think that our President Trump, threw us under the bus when he sided with President Putin over our intel agency.
Okay, thank you. Next question, and this one goes first to Mr. Andrus. The press, friend or enemy of the people?
It's a friend of the people. I mean, they may have liberal bias and all this, but the foundation, the First Amendment is, the foundation to the First Amendment is the press.
Okay, Mr. Guillory?
Between those two choices, I choose friend. I am glad to hear that we're looking and seeking more objectivity in the press, but it's definitely a friend.
Mr. Higgins?
American media has a power to be a friend or an enemy to the American people, and they manifest as both quite effectively.
Ms. Methvin?
Free press is critical to our democracy, so no, in no way, shape, or form are they the enemy of the country.
Mr. Thomas?
The press is our friend, and anytime you want to do an interview with the big man, give me a call.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Anderson?
Obviously, the press is a friend, especially since they're all president. We're not going to talk bad about a mother here. No, I believe in the First Amendment.
Okay, and our last lightning round question begins with Mr. Guillory. Term limits for members of Congress, yes or no?
I 100% absolutely support term limits for all federally elected officials.
Mr. Higgins?
The founding fathers gave us term limits. They're called elections. It's certainly something for a healthy debate we should engage in, but we should not change our Constitution lightly.
Thank you, Ms. Methvin.
Term limits, the problem with them is that by the time someone really understands how to be effective in the job and they are kicked out. So that is a problem, but I also see elections we have got to get dark money out of that.
Mr. Thomas?
I think term limits are necessary. What that year is, I think we can come to some type of resolution for that, but I believe that it's going to allow people to do their job and not make it a career.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Anderson?
As the Congressman said, we do have term limits. They're called elections, and as I agree with Ms. Methvin, take dark money out, let the people elect their representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily opposed, but I agree with the congressman that the best term limit is by the will of the people.
Okay, well, we've reached the end of the lightning round. Thank you for just using those 10 seconds there. Now we are going to go into closing remarks, and we're going to start with Congressman Higgins. There's going to be 1 minute per candidate, starting with.
Thank you, Pearson. Thank you for being a wonderful moderator, sir. You've been very kind. I would just like to say to this gathered crowd of amazing Americans that I've been struck at the honesty of Madam and the gentleman that stand up here with me. This is a room full of winners, man. There's no losing this thing. As long as Americans we can gather with love and respect for each other and share variances of ideologies and ideas in an open forum like this. So I commend my colleagues for the courage of their convictions, the honesty of their statements, and I commend all of you, my fellow Louisiana citizens and Americans, for attending this evening. It shows that you really care about the future of our country. God bless you one and all.
Thank you, Mr. Higgins. Ms. Methvin?
Thank you, Pearson, for hosting this tonight. It was delightful, and I compliment all of my colleagues up here as well. It was a delight to be with everyone. What's at stake in this election is the moral basis of this country. We are really facing a question of what America stands for. The divisiveness, the bigotry that has come out in the national dialogue does not serve any of us. And also economically, the hollowing out of the middle class that has resulted from some of the economic policies that have been followed are not good for business, and they're not good for people. So we're going in the wrong direction, and we need to work together as Americans, not Republicans, not Democrats, but together to address these difficult problems that we have and restore America to a place where we are admired in the world.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. And Mr. Thomas?
Yes, I would like to thank OneAcadiana for this event. It was very nice, and I want to also end it by saying that we're in a cold red situation, and we can't gamble with our future anymore in Louisiana. Right now, it's like a bathtub full of water and the faucet is on, and we got a bucket and a mop trying to mop up the floor without turning the faucet off. So we have to come to some realization of what's going on. We have to save our coast, we have to save our state, and realize that there's a dire need right now to save Louisiana. And I want to be the one to go to Washington and bring some real solutions to the table that's realistic.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. Mr. Anderson?
Yes, I would also like to thank you, Pearson and OneAcadiana, for hosting us, and thank you all for coming, as the Congressman pointed out. This is American democracy at work. We're standing up here, we all registered and qualified for an election. You're all here to pick one. Whether or not you pick me is immaterial, although please pick me. What I would like to see out of this process, on my behalf and perhaps across the country, just maybe we could all get a little bit better. Let's stop blaming the other guy for making the problems. Make your choices. Decide which way you want the country to keep going. Pick the person you think will push in that direction, and then stand by your convictions. That's what I'd like to see, and that's what I have seen out of engaging all the voters. And it's actually been a lot of fun, so right on. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Andrews?
Yeah, I'd like to thank everyone for inviting me here. It's absolutely enjoyable. My number one priority is the debt. I believe that fiscally conservative, constitutionally limited government is the best government. The government that governs least governs best. And I appreciate everybody's comments and feedback. And I didn't get a chance to respond to his question, but is there anything that Congress does well?
Yes.
I disagree.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Guillory.
Dr. Cross, and to my alma mater, UL Lafayette, and to everybody here, thank you. Thank you for tonight. Thank you for having me. Thank you to my fellow candidates here. I am humbled. I'm humbled over the last year and a half. Is that a selfie? Over the last year and a half, I've learned a lot. I've traveled all 9 parishes and precincts of St. Landry as well, and I'm just humbled. I love our area. This is my home. This is where I call. This is where my wife calls home. No one person has all the answers. I think everybody will agree with that. And I don't have a record in Congress yet, but I do have a record as a father, as a husband. I do have a record as an officer in the military, as an enlisted man, as a volunteer coach, as a business owner, as an attorney, in doing what I say I'm going to do. And I promise you this: there will never be a day that I take for granted of being your congressman. And there will never be a day that I don't fight for our best interests in Congress on our behalf, and I humbly ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, this brings us towards the end, or to the end of tonight's discussion. We want to thank once again to the candidates and the members of their staff for being here tonight. We certainly want to wish you the best of luck on November 6th, and may the person with the most support win. We'd like to thank UL, and we'd like to thank the Card Center for hosting this lovely and important event. We'd like to thank all the media that are here tonight helping us to cover it. We'd like to thank particularly OneAcadiana for creating this opportunity and organizing this event. We'd like to thank you all for joining us. We'd like to remind you of 2 important events: Ballots Over Breakfast on October 25th and Ballots Over Breakfast 2 on November 29th. Registration is open at OneAcadiana.org events. Do not forget to vote on November 6th. Make your voice count. And now please join me in applauding our candidates.